I will say that my expectations were exceeded on Sunday morning. To be honest with you, after Thursday night, I was really wondering if this was going to work because I was a little disturbed with the sound of the masks cutting down so much of the high end of things. And I actually have got an email into the people who made these saying, hey, this doesn't sound like the mask that I had originally. This is made of different material. It feels like it's made of polyester rather than a cotton blend that the beige masks that make you all look like ducks have. And Robin and I were experimenting, going back and forth between the two, and these definitely have a more deadened sound to it. So I've asked them, so what are you going to do about that? We'll see what their answer is. But Danny's got a mask on tonight that I'm kind of impressed with in terms of just because he looks dashing in it. But more importantly, if you talk to him, it sounds pretty natural. It has a frame in it that keeps it away from your mouth, just not 2 feet away from your mouth like the ones you're wearing. It's washable and it has an element inside. Thank you, Danny. It has an element inside that might work as well. Anyway, I'm just saying. But anyway, with the help with Scott, with the help of what he did with microphones, which we were really experimenting and thinking more about in terms of Christmas, I think what happened in terms of a musical product was far exceeded what I thought was going to happen. But here's a list of the things that for me, I guess really filled my heart on Sunday. One is that as I sat there, I didn't sit there, I was actually standing in front of you, and directed, I got lost in the history of what you guys had been doing over the last 5 months. It's been 5. I think we started meeting in August, didn't we? Yeah, August, September, October, November, 4 months. And just thinking, these folks, and I think I actually said it to the congregation at the beginning, these folks have been in 100-degree weather, and they have been in 40-degree weather, and everything in between. I love that. I love that effort. You guys have put up with a lot, and you still show up. And that to me is something those people would know nothing about, except that I said it. But even to that end, I really felt blessed, really, to be standing in front of you and all around you, knowing that for this one little moment, you had taken so much time just to be together. And that you've endured all of that, and endured even the difference of having that come together and then have these masks put on, and all of a sudden it changed. But you still did it. Some of you are walking upstairs, you didn't, there's just so much stuff that you were showing me in that moment. And then when I watched it back on the live stream, I don't know if any of you have actually watched the live stream. Scott says actually there's I think it might have even been Lee's Facebook post. He said Scott said that probably has the best sound of anything. But as I looked at it, and I'm seeing you even with these masks on, real. I mean, Mary Purdy, you looked absolutely radiant as you were singing on that when it caught you and Wally at the same time. Wally, keep your hands to yourself next time. You're on camera, you need to know that. No, just kidding. But as it just went around from person to person, there was life to it. And it's that kind of thing built upon the fact that I know what you've what you've put out to make this thing happen. And then to be flexible on Sunday, to show up and have to sit there for a while before we ever got to it. Having to bring chairs, having to know when to leave and think about all that stuff, wearing layers of clothing and then taking off layers of clothing, which could have gotten really bad after a while, but for the most part, it was mounting for me throughout your whole performance. And it was a short performance, right? So it's not a long song. But what struck me again was kind of what I was talking about even last week. what you demonstrated there really is a sense that we are a part of the identity of this church family. I don't think you separate Grace Baptist Church from a choir at this point. And I don't know if people even recognize that. And it's not just because I'm a choir director and you're the choir. I think people responded to the fact that you were there, and all of a sudden something felt a little more normal. Do you get that? And obviously they appreciated your efforts. Let me just read 2 emails I got. Okay. This one said, "How absolutely wonderful. It was like a revival. Having the choir in the service this morning was really more than the choir singing. It was a needed encouragement, a positive reinforcement, and a message of hope in what sometimes seems like a dismal time. It was saying that we can go big and almost be normal. I was weeping for joy all through the piece. Besides that, the parts were balanced, in tune, and together. Now that everybody knows where to stand, we can do it every week, right?" This one says, "I hope many have expressed how wonderful it was to get to hear our beloved choir once again. It was like a trip to the spa." I'm not sure what kind of spa they go to, but it was like a trip to the spa, cleansing, invigorating, and readying us to face what lies ahead, because we can hold on to the Rock of Ages. So, I hope that encourages you. It sure encouraged me, because it brought a sense that we are a part of not only the energy of what God wanted to do in that moment, but I hope you felt that after you sang, not just because people applauded, but there was just a feeling in the amphitheater that carried right into their worship, and they were engaged. They were part of that, and I was actually a little concerned that in the middle of that whole thing, that "Be Still My Soul" and the Saugus remembrance and all of that might be a little bumpy, but I just felt like everything just flowed really well, and I think they did too. And just to have you there, as you hear from these emails, creates again for our body, if you will, that we need you guys. We need that sense of normalcy. And I think for me, as I said last week, the best way to bring heart and soul and mind and strength and engage with the Word of Christ is through singing. For me it is, and I think many of you understand what I'm saying. And in that moment, rather than singing to God, we were making an offering to God, but you were singing to the congregation. And they needed that. They needed to be told, "We're here for you." They needed to sense that you were there. They needed to know that these people are, making an effort to try to make their worship that much more impactful. But more importantly, that you care enough to say, "Hey folks, hold on. Hold on." And I know there are people here in these seats right now that are holding on desperately, right? And you know them as well. So it's one thing to have moments where we can pray for one another and we know that people are right there. I spoke with Frank Rice and prayed with him this week. Man, that guy is at the bottom, okay? And they're moving. They bought a house in Acton, which is 3 doors from Patty Akkad. So that would be very helpful. But at the same time, he was very open with me, and I so appreciate people who are willing to be weak and willing to say, "I am broken, I am at the bottom, and I don't know where to go. God's the only place I can go, and right now He's choosing to keep me in the wilderness." And there you go. But that's through tears. That's not just like the way I said it. So that's the reality. And when I think about how many people are sitting in that amphitheater that may be going through similar things, because what he's dealing with was also a diagnosis of he has Parkinson's, he was told that. So you just kind of, it's just like, whatever reason, God's just kind of said, "Okay, Satan, you want to play with him, just don't kill him. And this is the result, you know. And just like Job, what can we do? We can't say anything. We just say, Lord, you know, you give, you take away, you bless, and you curse. And there are times when I just have to say, I am yours, you know. Yet I will praise you, I think is what Job responded, right? But when you show up, when you do what you did, it just gives worship that much more definition. And that's really what we were saying. It affirms, as I said last week, the reality of an invisible God, and for that moment it makes him visible. And I love to think of that. When we sing together, we share the freedom that God has given us as a body. When we sing together, we're saying to the church, we are not alone. We are together, and he is with us. Right? We believe the same thing, we pray the same thing, we praise the same thing, we say and proclaim the same truths, we bind our hearts together around that truth, we're singing together, proclaiming that our future is secure no matter what our present circumstance is, our love for each other continues to grow, our desire for being significant is caught up in the call that God has for us just to live out the gospel. And all of that stuff, just in short, and in some ways underneath the surface, is the very thing that this church needs. So, you know, I said to Ryan, I said, so what do you think? Once a month now, just keep doing with the choir, especially if they got to go outside because you got to memorize words. But he said, yeah, most definitely. So that's why we're going to start a new piece tonight. But before I do, it reminded me, I don't know how many of you know the name Brian Jeffrey Leach, but he wrote a hymn that we rarely sing, but I think is typical of what we just experienced together. And I don't know why it's caught up in me so emotionally tonight, but maybe just because we hadn't been doing it, and I've been missing it. But he's an English composer, 20th, 21st century. Just passed away in 2015, came from England, worked in part with a number of churches in Southern California, Hollywood Press being one of them, and caught up with Fred Bach at Hollywood Press, and that's the hymn that ended up in the hymnal called We Are God's People. And when he wrote it, and as I read through these words today, again, I thought very clearly, this is what happened to us. What we proclaimed, we are God's people, the chosen of the Lord, born of his Spirit, established by his word. Our cornerstone is Christ alone, and strong in him we stand. I think you demonstrated that on Sunday. Oh, let us live transparently and walk heart to heart and hand in hand. The second verse says, we are God's loved ones, the bride of Christ our Lord. I believe you communicated that sense of love to the congregation. For we have known it, the love of God outpoured. Now let's learn how to return the gift of love once given. Oh, let us share each joy and care, yes, even COVID, and live with the zeal that pleases heaven. And sometimes that zeal shows by just showing up, and that's what you did on Sunday. And I couldn't be more proud of you guys. He goes on to say, we are the body of which the Lord is head, called to obey him, now risen from the dead. He wills us be a family, diverse yet truly one. Oh, let us give our gifts to God, and so shall his work on earth be done. And I have to say, not only were you using your gifts on Sunday morning, but Jeff came to me, as did Laura, his secretary, in the care department, and they were speechless with your generosity for last week's care offering that we took to go to Christmas Care. Literally blown away. Because overall, you raised $1,843 worth of gifts, which are going to go to two families. One is a single mom with a kid, and another is a family of 5. So it was obvious to him that this money could be used, and these gift cards. There were tons of Visa cards, Walmart cards, Target cards, Bath and Body Works. Okay. You got to smell good, right? Dominoes, I love that one. That's great. Anyway, and then, about $800, $900 worth of cash that they could use. And what you need to know is that cash then Kathy Mack takes, and she goes out and buys presents, speaking to the parents in those families and saying, so what can we get for your kids, is basically what they do. That's using your gifts, folks, and that kind of generosity just marks you apart in my mind. But then it goes on to say, and he finishes with this, we are a temple, the Spirit's dwelling place, formed in great weakness, a cup to hold God's grace. Would you hear that line again? The Spirit's dwelling place, we're formed in great weakness as a cup to hold God's grace. That's a great line. We die alone, for on its own each ember loses fire. Yet, joined in one, the flame burns on to give warmth and light and to inspire. That's you guys. And that, I think, when I started reading through that hymn, I said, we just got to remember those words because it makes a huge difference for me. And I wanted to encourage you with that. So